Thank you so much, Representative Raskin, for your leadership in the House. It's been a great honor to co-chair the CPC Special Order Hour here every week on the floor. And since I have just been elected the first vice chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, I unfortunately won't be continuing to do that, but I'm still going to be right here for these special order hours, because I do think that they're an important opportunity for members to talk about issues all at once and to kind of pick an issue and then to focus on it. Obviously, today we're talking about the testimony from former FBI Director James Comey. This was highly anticipated testimony, and I'd be willing to guess that a lot more people perhaps even watched the testimony than watched the inauguration. But I think we learned a great deal from Director Comey. I appreciate that he was willing to come and testify. And he said some very important things. In that testimony, Mr. Comey confirmed that President Trump sought to influence the FBI investigation into his campaign's ties to Russia, including that of Michael Flynn. While the president had claimed that he did not ask Director Comey to drop the investigation, Mr. Comey actually testified under oath that Trump's directive was clear and that this was apparently putting that he began to memorialize their meetings. Every single meeting he had with President Trump, he would have the meeting and then go back to the car and immediately take notes on the meeting. And that is troubling. That was something that Director Comey never did with previous administrations. And one of the things that stuck out to me in his testimony is that he had actually asked, he felt so uncomfortable with the interactions that he was having with the president, because I think the American people need to understand the FBI is built to be an independent organization. And the reason that the term of the FBI director is 10 years is because it was a signal from Congress that even though the FBI director does serve at the pleasure of the president, and Mr. Comey was clear about that in his testimony today, the president has the ability to hire and fire the FBI director. But the reason Congress signaled through legislation that the term of the FBI director should be 10 years was because they wanted to send a signal that this body is incredibly important and the independence of this body is incredibly important. And so the fact that Mr. Comey, as FBI director, felt so uncomfortable about these interactions with the president, 9 interactions with the president. I think he had only 2 interactions with President Obama during his entire term. And yet in just the first few months, he had 9 interactions with President Trump. And he actually asked Attorney General Sessions and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein not to leave him alone with the president. That is really a remarkable, scary thing, and that he would have to ask for that. And it certainly should have raised some red flags and should have triggered some action from the Attorney General or the Deputy Attorney General. It did not. He never received an answer to that. Mr. Comey also said that he expects the special counsel's investigation to look into the possibility that Trump's actions were an obstruction of justice. He said that this did fall within the investigation scope. So while he didn't directly say that Trump was directly under investigation, he did say that the president's behavior does fall within the investigation scope. That, frankly, does nothing to dispel any concerns that are out there amongst the American people and many of us in Congress that President Trump's campaign did not collude with Russia. Apparently, he did not seem particularly concerned about whether or not Russia did interfere in the elections, but was more interested in whether or not his circle of friends, Michael Flynn, was under threat. Director Comey, or former Director Comey, also confirmed that Michael Flynn is under criminal investigation, and he raised more questions about Attorney General Jeff Sessions. As I have spoken about on the floor before, Attorney General Sessions should not have been involved in the firing of James Comey in the first place. He had recused himself from all things related to the investigation into the campaign's ties to Russia because of his involvement with the Trump campaign. And so that was good. We thought that was a very good move that he made to recuse himself. But then he immediately went and was directly involved in the decision-making around the person who was leading the investigation, in fact, involved in the decision to fire the person who was leading the investigation. Mr. Comey also hinted that Jeff Sessions had more contact with the Russians than maybe we even knew about. He could not speak to that in a public setting. He said that is for a classified setting, but obviously that raises a lot more questions, and the American people certainly deserve the truth. One of the biggest takeaways from the testimony was this. President Trump gave many changing reasons as to why Director Comey was fired. And Director Comey spoke to this today. He said at first it was because it was because of Comey's handling of the Clinton emails. Then it was that he had lost the support of the FBI agents, something that James Comey responded to and said those were lies, plain and simple. And actually, Mr. Comey spent quite some time really acknowledging the work of the organization, the FBI organization, and the agents and everything that he has done. I certainly got the impression that he felt very, very deeply upset by any indication that perhaps it was because his agents didn't want him to be there. What he pointed to, what Mr. Comey pointed to, is that eventually the president, in his own words, admitted that he fired James Comey over the Russian investigation. And then right after that actually said to the Russians that the pressure has now been taken off now that Comey has been fired. Those are all incredibly disturbing. And I am sad, Mr. Speaker, that the Republicans, some Republican colleagues, not all, but some, have tried to dismiss the president's actions as, quote, mistakes made by a new president who's learning how to do his job. Speaker Paul Ryan went so far as to say that, and this is a quote, that he's new at government. Therefore, I think he is learning as he goes. This is just one day after the Speaker said that it's obviously, that was his word, not appropriate for the President to ask for Mr. Comey's loyalty. So which one is it, Mr. Speaker? It is unacceptable to excuse the President's actions simply because he's not a career professional, especially when we're talking about something of this magnitude, the magnitude of interference in our election process in the United States of America by a foreign government. And we do not have any information still about all of the ways in which a president of the United States, this president of the United States, may be indebted to some foreign government because of their actions with the election. It has been repeatedly reported that the president does not sit for briefings, does not read the reports that are provided to him, does not stick to speeches on policies that are written for him, and frankly shows very little interest in participating in the administrative responsibilities that most presidents go through in order to learn what is a very big job. Yes, the job of the President of the United States is a very big job, and anybody who gets into that job, just as I do in this body as a new member of Congress, we try to learn the rules. We go to the people who know the most. We ask them to give us briefings. We suck up as much information as we possibly can so that we understand both content and process. But unfortunately, this president has not done any of that, and he has made many, many unforced errors. Frankly, he has put our national security at risk by giving away secrets to Russia, insulting key allies who have now said that they won't share information with us because they don't trust that we're going to be able to keep it secret. And NATO and our allies in the European Union, where I just came back, everybody around the world is unsure of what leadership, if any, to expect from the United States of America. Angela Merkel said this the best when she said, "We can't rely on anybody else anymore." And she said, we as the European Union have to just come together and rely on ourselves. And while that's great for the European Union, I'm glad that there is something that has happened here that's drawn the European Union together. It's an incredibly important entity for the world and has been doing remarkable work. But what I would hope, Mr. Speaker, is that countries around the world could know that the United States was going to continue to take global leadership, was going to continue to demonstrate that global leadership, most of all was going to be trusted to make relationships and respect the rules of those relationships. The American people are aware that the president's background is not in politics. However, the White House is not The Apprentice. Had a new employee in the Trump organization made as many errors as have been made in this administration, he would have been fired a long time ago. The American people deserve better, and not only do we demand that the president not intervene in any negative way in Director Mueller's investigation, and we're very pleased that Director Mueller has been appointed. I believe that that was an incredibly important step that Assistant Attorney General Rod Rosenstein took to appoint somebody with the credibility that Mueller has. We hope that this investigation will continue, because I think it's important for the American people to understand this is not an independent investigator or prosecutor. This is special counsel. So that still means that anything that Director Mueller finds, his findings, his reports, they do get run up the chain of command at the Department of Justice. And so if you watched yesterday's Senate Intelligence Committee hearings, you might have seen Senator Kamala Harris discuss this and ask that we have, ask Rod Rosenstein if he could assure that there really would be independence, that neither Rosenstein nor Jeff Sessions would get involved in trying to change or influence in any way whatever Director Mueller comes up with. She was not given that assurance yesterday, unfortunately, and so we still don't know, but we have to hope and believe that the President and this administration will preserve the independence of the special counsel and will take all of the findings and the recommendations as what they are presented and not try to change them. I really believe, Mr. Speaker, at this point that while the special counsel is an important step forward, I join my colleague, Mr. Raskin, and many, many others in this caucus, in our Democratic caucus, in calling for a special commission, an independent commission, similar to the 9/11 Commission, filled with citizens, not with members of Congress, but with respected citizens, and people with expertise, as well as those citizens, to actually come together and think not only about the immediate impact of how we get to the bottom of what has happened, but really, how do we prevent this going forward? What we're talking about is the sanctity of our democracy. We're talking about whether our elections can be free of influence from other countries. We're talking about if an American citizen casts a vote here in the United States for the President of the United States, that vote is not being influenced by a foreign government who has hacked our elections or worked in collusion with a campaign for the President of the United States. And that ultimately, whoever we select, whether it is this president or any president in the future, that president must be responsible to the American people. That is what democracy is about. We don't want any president, now or in the future, to ever be in a situation where there's information that can be used against them, where they could be blackmailed, leveraged, or where they are actively colluding with any government outside of this country. These are our elections. It is what makes this country great. It is why so many people from all around the world look at America with tremendous gratitude, with tremendous respect, even awe, for the way in which we've constructed our democracy. And that is part of what goes on in this chamber. And we need to know that the election of the President of this great country is always an election that the American people have faith in, and that democracy is preserved. And so, Mr. Speaker, I think what James Comey's testimony showed us today is we got a lot of answers, but we didn't get enough answers. There's still more information that we need to find. There's more information that the Senate Intelligence Committee needs to find. There's more information that the President may have to provide, and there is more information that the American people are going to demand in order to ensure that we get to the bottom of where we are, that we get an independent commission established, and that we allow Director Mueller and his investigation to proceed without any interference. That is the least that we have to be willing to do, and we have to be willing to put country above party as we try to ensure that we understand exactly what's happened. The American people deserve. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.